lawyers are really going to need help here because they are, inherently conservative. They are inherently slow to adopt tech. There are some law firms that I know that still aren't even in the cloud because they were nervous about, cloud-based computing. So, but their whole world is going to change by AI, and it's coming, and they don't have a choice. Like, they're going to have to learn it or they'll be out of business. And so I was like, I'm going to start helping people. So that's how the company started. I realized I was kind of in a unique position, having been a lawyer and, been in their shoes, and I understand the terminology. I understand the documents. And then, I understand our ethical obligations, and I understand the tech.
Welcome to another episode of Tools, Talents, and Techniques. And today I am joined by Miss Jennifer Case, and she has a very interesting story. I can't wait to hear more. And it's around a lot of things that I'm interested in, especially like entrepreneurship and artificial intelligence and how it's impacting the day-to-day and the work and the general overall world. So without further ado, here she is. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Justin. Glad to be here.
Before we jump into the deep end, could you just briefly give us a thumbnail of who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. So Jennifer Case, I'm an entrepreneur and a lawyer and a coach. I recently started a company called LawTech AI, where we specialize in education and coaching for lawyers on artificial intelligence. Before that, I ran a renewable energy company for 18 years called New Leaf Biofuel, where we converted cooking oil to biodiesel. And we also built a renewable fuel terminal that throughput biodiesel, ethanol, and renewable diesel. And before that, I was a litigator on the defense side up in LA.
So we have a lot to go through, because these are all interesting steps in your journey. And I know you're with the renewable energy company for almost 20 years. But let's talk about your origin story before we get into that. So
Sure.
Where are you originally from? Where did the Jennifer Case journey begin?
I was born in the San Fernando Valley, and I stayed there for most of my young life, other than a few years back east. We moved to Connecticut when I was 3 and back in San Fernando Valley by the time I was 7. So that was just a very short stint on the East Coast. Other than that, I've been in Southern California my whole life. Moved to Santa Clarita Valley, just 15 minutes north of San Fernando, when I was in junior high, and I stayed there through high school. And then after high school, I came down here to San Diego. I went to UC San Diego near college. And that was an amazing experience. Living in La Jolla and living near the beach I realized it's where I needed to be. So after college, I took a year and went to Silicon Valley, where I was in the .com boom. I worked at a startup fiber optics company and had stock options, and everybody thought I was crazy when I left a year later and went to law school. So I left there and came back down south and went to Pepperdine and went there for my law school career, again, living along the beach, which was wonderful. And then from there, I was a lawyer in Long Beach for a couple of years. And then I went to downtown LA for a couple of years. And then I had a interesting phone call from a friend of mine who was my former college roommate, who was living in San Diego, and she had this idea for a biodiesel business, and she wanted to know if I could be her lawyer. So I was a litigator. I didn't know much about starting businesses, but I thought it was a super interesting idea, and I brought her into my law firm in downtown. I talked to her a bit with some of the partners on, how to form the company and what kind of permits we were going to need and all that kind of stuff. And pretty much by the end of the meeting, I was speaking like I was one of the founders, and ended up becoming one of the founders. I ended up leaving the law firm shortly after that, joined her as a co-founder, and we built that company and ran it for 18 years.
Well, I want to dissect some of the things that you mentioned, because when you mentioned going to college and then making the move to, what was your major in school?
Well, funny enough, I went into UCSD pre-med. I had a plan when I was in high school that I actually wanted to be a doctor in the Navy. And my first choice college was the Naval Academy. And I poured my heart and soul into getting into the Naval Academy. And in the end, I did not get in. And luckily, my mom, God rest her soul, had begged me to have a second choice college. And I chose UCSD. So I stayed pre-med and went in pre-med. And then I think it was by the end of first quarter, I was drowning in college level chemistry and calculus and just all of these technical things that were just so much harder than what I had done in high school. And I realized I had to change my whole major. So there was no way I was going to survive the college level chemistry. I was literally going to fail out. So I dropped pre-med and I changed my major to political science, and I had a minor in law, and that's how I became a lawyer.
Was there anything specific about, being in law? Because one of the things that I see a lot, most people, it's like, okay, your career choices are, if you want to be successful, it's like doctor or lawyer, those things. Was it that kind of your mindset of you didn't have anything else that really interested you except for medical?
I was really motivated. Clearly, I just was, I think I just kind of had a high achievement mind. So I went, obviously I jumped from doctor to lawyer. But, from the law standpoint, I really felt like a profound sense of justice. I still do. I remember I had this professor in college who was amazing. I can't remember his name right now, but he was somebody who had argued in front of the Supreme Court to get the convictions overturned for Japanese Americans who had been convicted of felonies for violating curfew during the Japanese internment. And I was just enamored by the Constitution. I just thought I was just really inspired by what he did. And I just felt like I needed to be a part of this system, the system of government, the system of justice. I just wanted to dive headfirst. We learned a little bit in undergrad about some of the key constitutional cases, like flag burning cases and draft card burning, and how to the fight for birth control, and obviously all of the Jim Crow cases. And there was no turning back for me. I just realized I just had to be part of this justice system and continue to defend our Constitution.
And do you feel that same way in law school? Because that was when you were in undergrad, right? When you were inspired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my favorite class was constitutional law. I was just fascinated. And actually, Ruth Bader Ginsburg came and spoke at one of our law school dinners. It was so amazing.
And so when you went to law school, I hear a lot from people that are in that profession that you figure out pretty quickly which side you're on. You either litigation or not. Really, like that's it. Did you feel like that was the case where you quickly knew that you were going to be in the litigation side?
No, not necessarily. I actually, the beginning of my law school career was a little bit rocky. I didn't do well first semester. And if any of your listeners know about law school, your first semester is so crucial. I didn't do well. I think I got there kind of late. I was on the wait list. I didn't get to go to orientation. I was literally admitted to law school a few days before school started. It was like a rush. And I was living in Northern California at the time. So I, got there and I was completely unprepared. And even though I had been a fairly good student in college, I just flailed in the beginning. So my first year summer, I didn't have a job offer. I didn't have like an internship waiting for me at one of the big firms. So I interned at, Superior Court. I interned at, I think, an agency. I got a job, I think, the second year summer, working for a small law firm. So I never really had that experience where you get recruited by a big law firm. So I didn't really feel like I had a whole lot of choices. I wasn't, picking and choosing between the two top firms and like what I wanted to do. I got very lucky and met some cool people who brought me into their law firm when I graduated, and it happened to be litigation. It was an insurance defense firm. I was immediately thrown into depositions. We were defending insurance companies in the Northridge earthquake litigation, and I think I did my first year like 80 depositions, which, for a first year associate is unheard of. If I had been at a big firm, I would have never had that opportunity. So it was really cool. I got to, and I loved it. I wasn't in any way thinking, oh, I wish I was on the transactional side. I was in it. I was in court. I was doing depositions right away. And yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. And so when you were in, you said when you were in Silicon Valley for the .com. So tell me about that experience working at a startup. And hopefully I'm not skipping steps here. But when you start to piece all the pieces of the puzzle together, I can already hear like some of the challenges that you had and the things and experiences and doing this and a little bit of that. But I'd love to hear your first experience with that in that era.
That was super fun. I was the third employee of a fiber optics company that we grew to, I think before I left, we were at like 100. So I was an administrator and I was working with like two engineers who were building up this company. And we were like down the street from Yahoo. It was like wild during that time. And my job was essentially, setting up everybody's computers and getting all the software put together for, I was essentially just an admin. But it was very cool to watch this company go from nothing to everything. And yeah, that was a fun time. But I was on the wait list for Pepperdine, and I kind of assumed I wasn't going to go to law school because the whole summer had passed and I hadn't heard. And I was like, well, I guess, I'm going to do this .com thing for a while. And then I got in. So, and it was like, I had to make a very quick decision. I was married at the time to my ex-husband, and he had a job up there. And, I did too. I quit my job. He kept his job and commute. And I lived in Southern California and he lived in Northern California for that, first year. It was crazy. And then by, I don't know, when did the .com bubble burst? Like 2001 or something. I was in my second year of law school when the company that I worked for went under. It was gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I wouldn't have had any stock options anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's one of the questions I was thinking. I was like, well, wait a minute. Is there any regret? But no, I guess not. You dodged a bullet in many ways.
It would have evaporated either way.
So when you were at the law firm, when you got your friend wanted to come in to talk about starting the energy company, let's talk a little bit about that. What was it that was so appealing about that opportunity to help you make that decision?
So I guess I would say I'm a fairly impulsive person. Obviously, I decided to go to law school a few days before it started and no plans. And so, I was doing great. I had gotten recruited out of that first firm into a, pretty hoity-toity firm in downtown LA. And I was doing well. I was positioned to, kind of be on a partnership track. I was working with like a litigation team there, and it was a great job. It was a great team and I loved it. But then when I brought in my friend to have the meeting, I invited three people to that meeting, all partners. One was like the head of land use, one was head of like the environmental division, and one was head of like business. And he did, a lot of business transactions and I think some litigation. I helped prep her for the meeting. And like, okay, we're going to tell him, this whole story. And by the end of the meeting, I was walking out, and the partner in the business division kind of like put his arm around me, and he's like, "Great project, hun, but you guys need a business plan, not a lawyer." And I remember just being like, you don't believe in this business. Like, I was so offended. I was like, you don't see the vision. But then he was completely right. Like, we did not need lawyers yet. We really did need a business plan. So very shortly after that, I quit and I moved to San Diego, and I assumed I'd go back to law soon. I just was like, well, I'm going to help her get this business started. And so I kind of became like in-house counsel for the firm. I wrote a business plan. I also started writing competitive grants to raise money for the company, and found us an outside counsel lawyer. Did all the things that we kind of needed the law firm to do, but I did them from the inside. And so, and I had deferred my student loans. I came up with like all the savings I had, and I bought into the company, and I, became a partner in the company. And shortly after that, once we got off the ground, she actually decided that the business wasn't for her. So she ended up leaving the business, and I took over as the CEO, and I ran it for the rest of our time. And around that time, so we opened for business right around, I want to say, August of 2008, or I think, something like that, right before the crash. Yeah. And we had built the whole business plan around the fact that fuel was, $5, $6, $7 a gallon. I can't remember how bad it was back then, but it was really expensive, over $100 a barrel oil. And we knew we could make biodiesel for a lot less. And so it was really like exciting. We're like, we're going to be able to make so much money. And then as soon as that crash happened, the fuel prices went to $1. So now we were upside down. We had to spend $2 in order to make $1. And it was super stressful. So I think your original question was what got me so excited about, and why did I do it? I mean, we were turning French fry oil into fuel. And that was the coolest thing ever. And I didn't consider what my life was going to be like if I left this, kind of cushy, high paying, high respect, high powered job that I had, worked so hard to get. I didn't consider that I would have to defer my student loans for over a decade, and I was going to not be able to get paid forever. I was going to go into massive debt, and it was going to be the most stressful thing I ever did in my life. I just didn't consider it. I was just like, oh, this sounds fun. And I went and I did it. And, by the time I got my senses, and I was like, oh gosh, I should probably go back and be a lawyer, because this renewable energy thing is really hard. The crash had happened. People were not hiring lawyers unless you were doing bankruptcy. And it was kind of stuck. I was like, I need to make this thing work. And, I did, it became, my passion, and I loved it. I got to, testify in Congress. I got to testify on the EPA. I was an expert witness in a federal trial. I was, lobbying on, in Washington and in Sacramento for regulatory affairs and federal affairs, and trying to get policies passed that help the renewable energy industry. I became a leader in the trade organization, both the National Biodiesel Board and the state one. I actually helped build the state organization. It was a wild ride, and it was super fun, and I don't regret any of it. I just, I didn't do it purposely. I actually have a TED Talk that that's called The Accidental Entrepreneur. Like, I didn't do this on purpose, but I became an entrepreneur just by accident.
How did you deal with the stress? I mean, because even everything you said, from, the founder leaving, and, then you're taking over, you're like, all right, I got this, then you do it, and then you're like, okay, maybe I don't got this. And then all the ups and downs. Was there anything that you found helpful in dealing with the obstacles? Because it sounds like you got creative and you started working with other organizations, and and testify, doing all of those things. But was there anything in your life that you kind of leaned on to, I don't know, help you deal with it?
It was so stressful, I can tell you that. And I don't feel like in the beginning I managed my stress very well. And in fact, the friendships of, the friends that I started it with, they all broke up. We broke up, the partnership broke up. It was very stressful. And I think I wasn't handling it very well in the beginning. Eventually, I joined Entrepreneurs Organization, I wish I would have joined it way earlier, but I did join Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global organization of founders who come together as a peer network. And once I joined EO, I, started to really understand things that I had never really studied, like, really understanding what's the mission about with your company, what are core values, building a culture at your company that's positive, and those are things those terms were just foreign to me in the beginning. I was just like treading water, living every day, like trying to survive. And once I joined EO, I really was able to ground myself and realize that I needed to, as the founder and the CEO, I needed to work on the business, not in the business. And I didn't get that before. I lived and breathed the company. And my husband actually joined the company as well. So we both lived and breathed the company. We had no work-life balance. It was a 24-hour facility. So he would work at night to run the place, and then I would work during the day. And it was crazy. But eventually I started realizing that, this is going to burn me out. And this isn't sustainable. So I needed to take a step back, and I found a way to bring in some leadership and put my ego aside. And I didn't have to do everything myself. And in fact, I wasn't the best at everything myself. And so I hired people who were more talented than me, and I paid them more than I paid myself. And that was something I think in the beginning, I just, well, how could I pay someone more than me? Like, I'm the founder. And that was just such a naive view. And it's like, the reason you pay someone more is because they have talent that you don't have. And so, and then eventually we implemented the EOS system, which is an entrepreneurial operating system, where you as the founder, you call yourself the visionary, and then you have an integrator, which is essentially like a COO who actually manages the people and manages the processes and gets things done. So I think the long story short on that is I'm really good at the vision. I'm really good at setting the direction of the company and helping, set what I want to do. But as far as like operating the entire thing myself, there were people who were better at that than me. And when I finally put that team together, I found the balance I had needed, in those first really hard 10 years.
How long did it take you once you came to that realization, or maybe restate that, once somebody pointed that out to you? Because I know sometimes it takes longer to understand it than someone told you, that you were like, how long did it take to find those right people on the team to put in place?
I mean, it was an evolution. But I don't think I had a true, good executive team until 10 years in.
Okay.
I think before that, it was, we all wore way too many hats. But that's probably how long it took, was 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. So how about from once you realize, like, okay, this is something that I should do. Well, how long were you in the company until you joined EO? Maybe that's a better question.
About 10 years.
Oh, yeah. So it's about the 10 years. Okay.
Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe 9.
So would you say it took you about a year, like once you figured that part out of like working on the business, not in the business? And because I've heard that before many times, and it makes perfect sense to me. And I've seen it, 100 times. It's great. Being able to put your ego aside and then realizing that, I know I can't do this all myself is such an important thing, but then actually taking that leap and doing it and trusting it and doing it, it's that's a journey in itself.
It is. And, now I have a new venture where I'm a solo again, and it's starting from the beginning. And I kind of have to, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because it's actually like really bringing up some of these old feelings. And I have to just remind myself that I need to not go down that same road.
Yeah, well, okay. So this is a great transition, because and that's one of the things that initially brought you and your work to my attention is the AI for law firms. because AI is a big passion of mine. It's something that I use in just about everything, just about every day. And I've been interested in for a while. And one of the industries that I think is going to be most impacted is law. And the fact that you see that and you've been already been working on that for a while, I am intrigued to hear about your first interest in this and your steps. So please tell us how you got interested or first introduced to artificial intelligence.
So, being an EO, I am surrounded by entrepreneurs and founders, and a lot of them are in tech. So, my whole network we're early adopters of AI. Like right from the get go, we've been talking about it. There were people who are working in AI and in my organization way before ChatGPT came out. So I was already aware of it. As soon as ChatGPT came out, I was using it. So was everyone I know. And we were just fascinated and just playing with it and seeing how it was going to help solve, a bunch of problems and make us more efficient. So I guess I would just say I was an early adopter. So I was starting to use it while I was still at New Leaf and having my team use it. And we were just, and this was like early days. So, the earliest versions of ChatGPT that were not that great. But I was definitely using it and it was fun. So when I exited New Leaf last year, I had planned to take a year off, and I thought, between working since I was like pretty young all the way through that whole story I told you, I felt like I really deserved a year off. So I kind of pictured myself reading novels and doing yoga and, sleeping in, and that just didn't happen. I did not realize how quickly I would get bored of that. And it was just a couple of months later, I went onto LinkedIn and just posted, without much thought, that I had left New Leaf and that I was going to try to figure out what I was going to do next. And I really didn't have a clue. I just, was thinking about it. Meanwhile, still playing with AI, just, trying every new tool. And, I didn't think, but I'm a lawyer. But I'm not techie. I don't see myself as like tech forward person. So I really didn't consider that I could do something in tech, but I had posted that I wasn't with New Leaf anymore. And the lawyer who originally hired me at the insurance defense firm, he was my first boss at law school. He called me and he said, "Hey, would you ever want to come back and work at the firm again?" And I was like, "I haven't worked there in over 22 years. You think you want me to come back? Like, what am I going to do? Like, be an associate and work like 50 hours a week and that I have to bill, or work 80 and bill 50? Like, I just didn't see that happening." But I was intrigued by the offer, and I thought about it, and we had a couple more conversations. And in one of the conversations, I'd asked him, like, "Hey, what are you guys doing with AI right now? This is going to change everything." And he's like, "Oh, we're not doing anything. The managing partner, he's so conservative. We're just not touching it." I was like, "Man." He's like, "Why? Do you know something about AI?" And I said, "Yeah, I know a bit." And he's like, "Well, if you come back to the firm, can you please teach us how to use it and how we should be thinking about that?" And it just like sparked in my mind. I was like, you know what? Lawyers are really going to need help here, because they are, inherently conservative. They are inherently slow to adopt tech. There are some law firms that I know that still aren't even in the cloud because they were nervous about, cloud-based computing. So, but their whole world is going to change by AI, and it's coming, and they don't have a choice. Like, they're going to have to learn it or they'll be out of business. And so I was like, I'm going to start helping people. So that's how the company started. I realized I was kind of in a unique position, having been a lawyer and, been in their shoes, and I understand the terminology. I understand the documents. And then, I understand our ethical obligations, and I understand a bit of the tech. So I spent about 6 months to a year. I took a bunch of classes and I learned everything I could, got myself caught up in law, got myself caught up in AI. And started coaching clients at first for free, and built a couple of CLE courses also for free, and I started a mastermind for lawyers where I bring in practicing lawyers to just show each other what they're doing. And I am a facilitator of that. And that's been super fun. And yeah, now I actually have real clients. So it's been pretty cool.
Well, congratulations. And I know it's a long journey so far and everything that you've done, but I think you're just at the tip of the iceberg right now too, because it's, from everything I know and I see, law is going to be one of the biggest impacted areas. And so what you said resonates with me, especially because I work in commercial real estate as my day job, and the amount of progress that I see and efficiencies that are created, and not just like ChatGPT, but there's so many tools out there and so many different things, and using the right ones for the right use cases is so important. But in law, it's so much around words and data, and it's the low hanging fruit. And so is there any major pushback or hesitancy that you're seeing? Because again, commercial real estate, it's very conservative. People don't do anything until it's absolutely necessary because they don't want to change what they've been doing. What are some of the biggest things that you're hearing from the law firms?
So other than that first conversation that I had with the partner that I had originally worked for, who said they were doing nothing, I think I'm kind of right now in an echo chamber between, being an EO, improvisers, being kind of a thought leader on LawTech, on LinkedIn. It feels like there's a lot of momentum. It feels like the lawyers are ready to adopt AI in some way or another, especially if you're in a big firm. If you're in one of the big firms, there's not a question about if we're adopting AI. It's how and when and to what extent. So the train has left the station, at least when it comes to big law. I think there's a good amount, my suspicion, because, I don't know these people because they're not in my realm yet, but my suspicion is that there are still the vast majority of small to mid-sized firms are still struggling with what to use and how to use it. So those are the people that I would like to try to reach. And it's hard to reach them. If they're not tech savvy, they're not on LinkedIn. They don't see my posts. If they don't necessarily think that AI is going to change the law, they're not seeking out an MCLE on AI and the law. So those are the people that it's going to be very hard to reach. So I think they're there, and I think that it's going to be a matter of time. But I think the hesitancy is more around how to adopt it, not that it's like everybody seems to know they have to. But what the problem is that, lawyers, most of them, especially if they're a small firm, they're also entrepreneurs. They're running the business. There's a good amount of work that they do that's not billable to anybody because it's just running the practice. It's doing their social media and their advertising and, managing the office and, managing all the different types of softwares and all those things. And it's overwhelming to try to learn artificial intelligence because there's a new tool every single day. All of your current technology, whether it's your CRM or your case management software or your timekeeper or your legal research platform, they're all trying to sell you on the AI upgrade. You have companies like Harvey out there raising hundreds of billions of dollars and saying we can do it all for you, but they won't return the phone calls of the small and medium law firms. So they're like, oh, I think I'm supposed to be going after Harvey, but they can't because Harvey is too busy for them. So I think they're a little bit stuck. They're like, well, what do I use? They have heard the horror stories about hallucinations where lawyers did not check their sites and they turned in briefs to courts that were fabricated case law and they get sanctioned. And there's some people who are potentially being disbarred over this. So they're scared for a reason and they're intimidated for a reason. And so that's why, I'm here. My whole mission is to meet where you are you continue to do what you do best, which is going out there and, winning cases. And I will meet with you once a week. I'm going to look at what you do. I'm going to go do research for you. I'm going to bring you tools that I think will help you. We'll test them together. If we like it, then I will train you how to use it, and I'll train your staff. So I'm just trying to make it really easy, and trying to make it so that they start with a strong foundation and they don't have to freak out about all the different things that are coming out. Let me do that part. Let me bring you the things that are going to work for your workflows.
That sounds so reasonable, but getting somebody to execute. But I love the way you're saying about showing them, right? Because a lot of people are like, well, no, this, you're like, no, I'll show you. And the proof is in the pudding. And one of the things that I see and what I do, and working with a lot of different AI tools, it's like people are like, how did you do that? And then I show them, I'm like, well, I used this and it did that. Like, how'd you do that so fast? Like, well, we can make it better, but this is just like the first shot of what we were able to do with this, whether it's putting together a video, a document, doing the research, doing all those things. So I think the way you're approaching it is appropriate. It's the way you should be doing it. And so when all of your experiences and working in law and working in, the startup world and doing all of that, do you feel like you have more of a patience and maybe a confidence in taking on this new endeavor? Do you ever think about that of like, oh, these are no, you're
no, I have imposter syndrome. I'm an entrepreneur. I live there in imposter syndrome. I wake up every day and I go, how did I fake it till I make it this long? I'm constantly questioning myself. But like, I'm a lifelong learner. I wake up every day and I want to learn more. So that's like both a benefit to me, but it's also kind of a crutch, because it took me a long time to be willing to take on a client, because I felt like I didn't know enough and I wasn't prepared. And what if, I'm not intelligent enough, or what if I'm not smart enough, or what if I can't figure this out? And, that keeps me learning, but it also keeps me, full of stress. I'm always questioning whether I'm good enough for what I'm doing. But you know what? You just got to take risks. Like I said, I'm definitely a risk taker, and I don't see myself changing anytime soon. That's just kind of who I am. And yeah.
Well, here, let me soften that for you a bit, because here's the thing. Like, you're right. Like, what you're doing, you're right. You're in the right position. You're in the right industry. You have the right experience. You have the right people next to you and behind you with provisors and EO. So I don't know. Be kind to yourself because it's good. Because I know maybe it doesn't feel like, sometimes success doesn't feel like success, even though you're like right there. Because you're right, you're working on it, you're doing it, you're doing the work too, and you're building something. But I think knowing that you are absolutely right, and not only are you good enough, but you're ahead of the curve right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I've definitely learned over the years, is that, my success, my personal success, is not at all tied to my business success, and it's not at all tied to financial success. I feel successful because I wake up every day and I'm so excited to do my work. That's like, I'm living in my genius zone. Everything I'm doing right now, I'm inspired by, I'm passionate about. And so I'm successful, full stop, because of that. But I'm always going to strive to be better for my clients. And, as a human, as a mother, as a wife, I'm constantly want to level up. And I think that drive to constantly level up is, it's challenging as a human. I don't know if there's anybody who doesn't feel that way. Like, I've always felt that way. Like, I just want to continuously improve. I think it must be super peaceful to be somebody who is like, no, I'm good, just like this. Like, it must be so peaceful. I don't know anyone like that, but if there's anyone out there, please call me and tell me how you got there.
Well, let me ask you this: when did you realize that? Like, what you how you define success, and when you arrived there and felt that way? Is I'm sure that was an evolution, but was there a certain moment or time that you were like, you know what, I like me, I like who I am and how I am?
I figured that out, you know, around the time that I had joined EO back in maybe 2014. I realized, because I really loved what I was doing at New Leaf. Like I was so passionate about that company and about that product. You know, I mentioned this earlier. I did a TED talk on it, and it was about, you know, it was about the fear of failure, and I was so scared of failing, like my whole life. And I kind of, during the time I was writing this talk on failure, is when I realized, like, you know, success is not like, it's not like some moment in time where you're going to all of a sudden get there and you're going to be like, now this is success. Because I was always like moving the measuring stick, like, oh, I'm going to be successful when I get this much money, or I'm going to be successful when, you know, I have, you know, this much, you know, respect as an attorney, or whatever it was. But that's just an impossible feat, because if you are a person who's constantly trying to level up, you're always going to move that yardstick. So during the process of writing that talk, I came to this conclusion that, like, success is like all in here. It's all like in your mind, in your soul. You have to just like feel it from the inside, and it has nothing to do with any external factors.
It sounds, the expression like over the mountains, there's other mountains, right? So like you get over one, and then it's like, well, now you take the tools that you got from getting over that one and you use that to go over the other one. And I feel like once you know that, and once you fail enough, and I also want to talk more about the TED Talk also, but once you fail enough times that you realize, like, oh, like I'm not really failing. Like this is just part of making the sausage. Like this is just how it works. Like you just fall forward, and you get up and you fall a little better next time. Um, how did the opportunity for the TED Talk come about? Like how was that introduced to you? And were they like, hey, what was that about?
I get that job. Oh, my brother-in-law worked for the college that was hosting it, and he thought of me. And I sent in a resume, basically, and I said, I have a speech I've been working on, and this is what I want to talk about. It ended up being completely different than what I thought I was going to write about.
Well, that was kind of my question. I wanted to ask nicely, like somebody's like, hey, we want you to talk about failure.
Yeah, no, I don't know why. Like, I forget. I think I was going to talk about my journey of being part of New Leaf. So I was definitely going to talk about that company. At the time, my mom was going very downhill with Alzheimer's. It was a really rough time. And my partnership was falling apart at the company. And, I was dealing with some other personal stuff. It was just a really, really hard time in my life when that opportunity came up. And so for all, logical purposes, I should have said no, that I'm not going to spend a bunch of time preparing for this. But it ended up being like really cathartic. My husband estimates that I, practiced the speech like 248 times. We would just go on hikes and I would just repeat it over and over again. Just, he'd be like, oh, you missed this word, you missed this word. And, but it was really cathartic because I went through, it was about failure, but it was about my relationship with my dad. It was about losing my mom. It was about the journey to New Leaf and how we almost failed so many times. And in the end, the story was about myself and how every failure I've ever had has led me to where I am today. And I don't need to keep pushing my measuring stick for success. Like I'm good, like just the way I am, just the way, and we all are. Failure is just, part of the process. I literally have this sitting on my desk. This is part of the process. To remind myself, whenever something is going on and I don't feel quite like, oh, I feel like I'm not doing this right. No, this is all part of the process. And failing is just,
That's amazing. And something that also I like to think about balance, right? And then balance in a lot of different ways. But one thing that when you were saying the imposter syndrome and feeling this certain way, there's a balance between confidence and humility that I think when I first started to realize it was probably in like the 2005 or six. Just the first person. No, excuse me. It's probably 2010 when the first person I saw that like nailed it, that had that balance of that in my life. I've seen people on TV that kind of had that, but couldn't put the terms on it. But seeing people that in their day-to-day practice and who they are and how they show up that have that confidence, like, look, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to try my best to figure it out. I'm going to get the right people beside me to help figure it out. And so confident enough to take the leap and do the things, and humble enough to know that they can't do it alone, or that it's going to be easy. And that's one of those things. And like, knowing this part of the process, that's all the secret sauce. Like that's it from all the people that I talk to and that I see in my life. Like once you have that, it's like everything else is just the work.
True. Yeah. And honestly, like balance is such like a hard, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever achieve the whole like work-life balance. Towards the end of my time at New Leaf, I was over it. I had been on that roller coaster for so long, and I was not enjoying the ride anymore. It wasn't the way it was in the beginning, where I was super excited about every day. There were so many frustrations. It was so challenging because of regulations, and we were just in a battle. I just felt like I was going to battle every day. Like I had to put on my armor, and there was no balance in that at all. And so I had lost that passion. I didn't want to get up and go to work every day. So glad I got to the opportunity to leave and do something else. And the fear I had of leaving was that, like, oh my gosh, this is my identity. I've been doing this for so long. Like, who am I without New Leaf? Who am I if I'm not that person? So that was like scary. But the way I feel now, is like that excitement again, and that, I want to get up early, and I want to get to work, and I want to work late. And I find I have to force myself to stop. Okay, the work will still be there tomorrow. Just because you're excited doesn't mean you have to work 12 hours a day, because, it's just not necessary. So I don't know, achieving balance. I haven't figured out that secret sauce yet, especially with something I'm so excited about. I just want to work on it. It doesn't feel like work.
I think you have. I mean, so just based on what you've said and shown, because it's not when I think of balance, it's never just two things. It's like work life, but it's like, your hobbies and the things that, and work, and then family and all. It's not one or two or three things. There's so many things, and they're always moving. So, I'm not saying like achieving, I don't know, homeostasis or something like that. It's never that, but it teeters. And the fact that you said you go for hikes with your husband and talk about things, and, sometimes those things overlap, and that's okay too. And you're always going to be teetering and doing those things, but you always kind of find your balance in the dance. So
I definitely work hard, play hard. That is my personal motto. It's always been that way. And I think that's what balance means to me. It's work hard and play hard and, rest hard.
Live life hard. I love it. So listen, you've been very generous and gracious with your time. So I want to make sure that we leave this last couple of minutes. Is there anything that you want to share? Any takeaways from your journey? Things that you want the audience to know?
Well, if you are nervous about starting with AI because you don't have the perfect tool, or you feel like you don't have, a lot of time yet, just try one tool. Find a tool, take a workflow that you do often, something that you that's repetitive for you. Try a tool and see what happens. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just give it a shot, because once you get started, you're going to realize that this is not that scary, and it's not that intimidating, and it's actually going to save you time and effort and, you'll go down the rabbit hole like me and Dustin have.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's fun down the rabbit hole. I love it. Like you said, like once you get into it and realize all the things I can do, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So listen, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And congrats on your success.
Thank you so much. Yours too.